How are you?
Good. Mwah.
How's everything?
Good. We're gonna do Puerto Rico here as soon as we're done
Yes,
with the
I
boats.
know. Danny was telling me
Okay.
she's gonna do the Puerto Rico part. Fernando was here,
Yes. No. He
so
talked
now
to
I
him.
have So I'm gonna do the same piece, but now there is something about maybe like they're changing my story, but nobody knows. Betty doesn't
Always
know.
fun.
Yes, because
It's
he
fun.
is learning. This is amazing. Is he coming back to do the Puerto Rico?
So after the boats are done, he's gonna come here
Look
with
at
about
this one.
five other
Have you
men.
seen this one? Alice accidentally does U-turn in Sunday and enter illegal territory.
I
Ah,
haven't seen that yet.
look at this. Read it because if I can, I'll ask him a question in Somalian. Alice accidentally does. Look last name. Look.
What is it? Um, documented. Documented. Doc.
Docked.
Like
That's
doc.
docked.
I think. Snitch or something. So they might have accidentally released the
Okay.
names of.
Listen. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement's website inadvertently dumped personal information in
Yeah.
hundreds of callers and their neighbors as part of the Trump administration plan to snitch on
Right.
immigrants.
Remember that? Report your the hotline they set up to report illegal immigrants. So they released their names and numbers.
Hundreds of call logs are available for download on the Facebook too.
It's got to be like a membership list with parents, right?
Yes, it's like even it's like there's a committee on the
I know, but
defense
these
of
are their allies.
the
These are the
committee.
ones who hate immigrants that are calling.
Yes, yeah, the committee for the defense of the religion. Did you? Stop.
Frank Sherry, Patty Show. Morella was also going to do a video. It's okay. It really is like try a bunch of them, 3 or 4. Like I have one for hey boss. Okay. McGovern. Yeah. Okay. All right. His folks are here. Thank you. All right. Heads up. Here they come. My boss said I can't come over yet. Thank you, guys. Hold on for a minute.
Well, we don't have a lot of time. We just have to do this, and the impromptu-ness of it. Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming, my colleagues. Each of us is going to make an expression on the situation in Puerto Rico. The basic thrust of our concern is that there are people that are ill. They're in hospitals. They're in senior citizens. They're infirmed. They're on dialysis. They're receiving cancer treatment, chemotherapy. They are elderly people that are alone. And there is a broad community in the diaspora, the Puerto Rican community, that wants them to come home. We have received messages from our family members and from family members of people in our district that say, can you find a way for them to be here so they can be put in a safe place? There is no water for over half of the population on the island of Puerto Rico, and this is going into day number 15. There is no electricity for 90% of the population. And so think of the healthcare crisis. There are no schools for children to go to. Hospitals are on the verge of collapse in many parts, running on generators. And so we have one issue after another issue. So we just think it's time for FEMA to step up. And if this is the most powerful and the richest nation in the world, for those who want to leave, and lastly, look, if you have money, you are getting your family off the island. I know that. You can see the jets setting up one after another, the private jets on the private airport, and people are leaving. Should it be that only if you are wealthy and can afford to hire a private jet that you can put your family in a safe place? Or should all of those who wish to relocate to a safe place be able to do it? But today, we're talking about those that are most infirm, those that are ill, those that are most in jeopardy. And I'd like Nidia Velasquez to say a few words because we're going to do this. All of us are going to say a word here this morning.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Puerto Rican diaspora in the United States and the media that finally has given the images of the struggle, the pain, the suffering. And through the work that you have done in Puerto Rico, you have been able to raise awareness in this country that we must assist those fellow citizens in Puerto Rico. And, right now we lost 16 people during the hurricane, and that number has risen to 34. People are saying that there are bodies in remote areas that have not been moved, so we don't know the final count. To me, it was quite interesting that after the president made such a outrageous statement regarding the fact that it wasn't a catastrophic disaster based on the number of deaths, that then the local government came out and stated that there is a 34 number. So what Luis and all of us and all my colleagues here are doing is giving voice to the Puerto Rican diaspora who would like to bring to the United States those who might be in the brink of even dying because the reality of Puerto Rico doesn't allow for these vulnerable people, sick people to stay in Puerto Rico and get the treatment that they need. So for us, this is an act of humanitarian. It's a case of humanitarian crisis, and we thank all of you, and we call upon FEMA to use every tool they have to make sure that we are able to bring to New York, to Florida, to Illinois, Connecticut, and any other part of the country where these individuals might have relatives to be able to take care of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Jose?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Luis, for bringing us together. Thank you for calling on FEMA. Let me join Nidia's comments about the media that has been really stepping up and reporting. I think you've helped Americans understand that Puerto Ricans are American citizens. And I think without the media, people would not know that or continue not to know it. And secondly, you've also put the graphics on for people to understand. Look, what we're asking here, and I know this is repetitious, what we're asking is really not that difficult to understand. We're not saying that person or that person. We're saying if there's someone at risk in a hospital that has no light, that has no water, that has no medicine, if somebody is in a nursing home who is at risk, the people who are at risk can either come here or come to relatives here, and the states are willing to take them and provide for them. That's who we want. We want to take out of the island the people who run the risk, honestly, without being overdramatic, of dying. They run the risk of dying, and we have a chance to do it. You know, if there is a blessing here, they're American citizens. There's no visa waiver situation where you have to wait for 6 months or something. They could come tomorrow, and that's what we should do. So we're here to call on FEMA to open its doors and open its heart and understand that we're asking for those who cannot take care of themselves to be allowed to travel where they can be taken care of. Thank you.
McGovern? Congressman McGovern from Massachusetts?
So I represent a district with a large Puerto Rican population, and we're getting calls each and every day from from people who have families in Puerto Rico who still can't get a hold of them, or who are worried about their family members who are ill, who may be on dialysis. One person called; their mother has dementia. They're concerned about their safety, and they want to find a way to be able to provide at least some temporary safety for them by bringing them to Massachusetts to be with their families. We are working in the city of Worcester, where I'm from, led by a great city councilor, Sarai Rivera. We're talking about kind of a temporary resettlement program, about families that have no choice but to leave can come. We will welcome them with housing. We're working with our school departments, our hospitals. I mean, this is a desperate situation. And despite all the happy talk coming out of the White House, my constituents are offended by the president, who minimizes the tragedy in Puerto Rico, who tosses paper towels into a crowd and thinks that somehow that is a great act of compassion. We had a briefing yesterday with former Senator Mary Landrieu of Louisiana. She talked to us about what happened in her city in the aftermath of Katrina. Nearly 90% of the people who lived in New Orleans left. Most of them have come back, but they had to leave because it was unlivable. But it was easier for them to leave because there was access, road access, into New Orleans. We don't have that luxury in Puerto Rico, and there should be no planes leaving the island, no FEMA planes leaving the island that are empty. Every plane should be carrying back people who are in need of medical attention, who want to come back and reunite with their families. This is urgent, and we're working together to try to make sure that FEMA responds to our call and the call of our constituents. Thank you.
Rosa DeLauro? Please, Rosa.
Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut. I really join my colleagues. And we're here today. We are more than offended about the response to the tragedy that has occurred in Puerto Rico. It is a humanitarian crisis of biblical proportions. We are angry and we are frustrated, but we want to channel that anger and that frustration into action, which will help to make a difference for those who are suffering, who are ill, who are sick, who need help on the island of Puerto Rico. I met with my Puerto Rican community this past Monday, and within that room, people from the Fairhaven community who were telling me about aunts, about uncles, about sisters who are on dialysis, who can't get the treatment that they need because there is no power and there is no water. If a hospital doesn't have a generator, it cannot function. I witnessed this in Hurricane Sandy, and it was within the state of Connecticut and in my district when our hospice facility in Branford, they ran out of power, and I worked with them to evacuate the people from there to get them to Yale New Haven Hospital so we could save lives. What this effort is about today is saving lives. That's what we are engaged and involved in. We can find those who are in need of medical treatment and of care. And that's what we want to do, and we want FEMA to cooperate and bring these folks home. And we are willing to talk to private carriers and others to say, help the American citizens on the island of Puerto Rico. Let's get them the treatment and the care that they need in order to survive. That's why we are here today. Thank you.
I'm going to apologize to all my colleagues. We're just, Joe Crowley, New York. Marcy? Marcy.
Okay. Ohio, co-chair Great Lakes Task Force. We have a lot of ships up on the Great Lakes. It takes 3 hours from Puerto Rico to our coast. These are American citizens that we're talking about. It is a true humanitarian crisis. I represent places like Lorain, Ohio, the largest Puerto Rican settlement west of New York City, including parts of Chicago, by the way. So we claim that. West Cleveland. I just saw the movie Dunkirk. If 80 years ago, private citizens who had vessels could manage to get them to Dunkirk during a time of war and back to the coast, one of the most historic evacuations in history, all right? What is taking FEMA so long? Why aren't there ports of call where they can work with the private sector, individuals who have vessels, and bring people who want to come stateside home with their families? If they have illness, young people who are missing their school days now, we don't expect that things will be rebuilt down there for 2 years, and who knows what form that rebuilding will take. And let me say this. We are told that it's going to cost $80 billion to begin rebuilding. What does FEMA do with that money? They rent trailers. Why can't they rent hotel rooms in Lorain, Ohio? All right? They move supplies in. Why can't they move them to Lorain, Ohio? Why can't we bring people here who have relatives who can help them care for themselves after this horrendous trauma that they have faced in Puerto Rico. This is a humanitarian crisis. Every day I pray that cholera doesn't break out down there, because that's what we're facing. And finally, we sent 5 containers from Lorain, Ohio to Puerto Rico. Guess what? They can't get them in because of the roads. So it's more humanitarian, it's more realistic to bring people here and care for them here. Thank you for your leadership.
No, thank you for being here. Joe Crowley.
Congressman Joe Crowley, represent the 14th Congressional District, parts of Queens and Bronx in New York. I have a large Puerto Rican population within my own district. Let me say, when a disaster like this takes place, you have immediate needs, you have short-term needs, you have mid-term needs, and you have long-term needs. We are still in the immediate phase. There is a catastrophe that is unrolling in front of our eyes. And what we're asking is for those who do not have connections, for those who do not have money and resources, for the elderly and the frail, and those who are most compromised, who want to come to the mainland. They want to come to the mainland from Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands. FEMA needs to make that happen. Their health and their lives are at risk. And that's what we as members of Congress are doing. We're not calling anyone out. We're just saying, do your job. Get these American citizens to the United States so they can be cared for, they can be comforted, and that their lives can be saved.
Yes, I had the privilege to travel to Puerto Rico last weekend with Congressman Luis Gutiérrez. Folks that are going to be meeting the next phases of this tragedy, because this tragedy has several phases: the wind, the water, challenges, and later on maybe even epidemics. They must have access to a safety net. The only place where they're going to get this safety net is in the United States, although that safety net is always under attack by folks from the other side of the aisle. This is the only place where they have many family members and access to a safety net for the elderly, for children that are ill, for children that will miss schools, for families that need to reunite. This is the place where it can happen. In America, that has been the tradition of our nation. So let's give them access to that safety net. Let's make sure that FEMA provides the ability for them to have a path to safety, and to ensure that thousands of people will not be subject to some of the harshest conditions that potentially may develop as this epidemic, as this tragedy takes on different faces. So I was happy to be there with Congressman Luis Gutiérrez. I went to a hospital that shut down because the generator went down. And seniors had to be rushed out of there. And that hospital had to be shut down. And it had to be swapped for bacteria and shut down for 3 days before it can reopen again. That's the reality on the ground. Esa es la realidad allá en Puerto Rico. Vamos a darle ayuda a esta gente para que puedan sobrevivir y que Puerto Rico se pueda levantar de nuevo.
Thank you, Congressman. As you see, look, we did this in a little while. I assure you, we can bring you dozens of members. And here's their basic message. They have people in their districts. And for those that are always concerned about how much this is going to cost, let me just tell you, the diaspora, the Puerto Rican diaspora, you have aunts and uncles ready to take in their nephews and nieces. You have moms and dads ready to take in their children. You have grandparents ready to take in their grandchildren. So this is about a community effort. We have the possibility here. So here's the basic question. When FEMA goes out and distributes water, when they finally do, when they distribute the food, when they try to put the energy up, shouldn't they ask a simple question? Do you need to be relocated? Do you need to be resettled? Do you feel safe? And I just tell the members of the press, please, personalize this. Think for one moment it was your dad, your sister, your nephew, your grandchild. What would you do to get them off the island of Puerto Rico, irrespective of what the government might be saying? I know you all saw the President of the United States go there and throw paper towels, and everybody was joyful and laughing, it seemed like. And then they went to Guaynabo on the coast. There are hundreds of thousands of people in the mountains. Many people think of Puerto Rico and they think of the beach. And they think of the hotel on the beach. And they think of the ocean. No, 2/3 of Puerto Rico is mountains. And hundreds of thousands of people live in those mountains. And if you understand anything about this catastrophe, the rain sent the mountains down upon the people through the rivers and washed away towns. There are no bridges, there are no roads. We should simply ask, bring us your most infirmed and sick and those who want to come. I feel so impotent when people call my office and say, Congressman, can you help me bring my mother? Can you help me bring my aunt? Can you help me bring my brother? Can you help me bring my sister? Can you help me bring my family members? I want them here. Todos los días recibo llamadas. Como hemos escuchado de los otros congresistas, yo no soy único. Yo no soy especial. Ustedes han escuchado de los otros congresistas. La demanda de la comunidad de la diáspora puertorriqueña es: nosotros queremos nuestros seres queridos que están en peligro y queremos que FEMA nos los traiga para que podamos darle la bienvenida, la nutrición, los hospitales y el cuidado médico que ellos necesitan. Mire, esto es un desastre sin proporciones. Lastly, this is a catastrophe, ladies and gentlemen. I was there with Congressman Espaillat. Here's the interesting thing. We asked to go down there, and the president said, and the federal government said, oh, no, we don't have time for senators and congressmen to go down there and interrupt the work of rescue. So we went and bought our own airline tickets and went down there. We rented our own car and went down there. We found our own housing facilities and went down there. And when we came back, we said the same thing that every reporter that's down there is saying, and that this is a humanitarian crisis. They don't want you to know the truth, but we are telling. And every day, people are sending texts and emails, and as they're able to communicate, however they're able to communicate, every story we get is a story of human tragedy, of life and death and that struggle. They should be able to come back to the mainland of the United States. If this were Houston, we would have already driven there. If this was New Orleans, we would have already driven there. We cannot drive down to the island of Puerto Rico and rescue our loved ones.
Actually supply planes or boats or whatever?
Absolutely, they have the capacity. And not only the capacity, they have the funding to do it. And they say to me, well, the governor hasn't asked for it. Well, you know what? I'm a member of Congress. I represent 125,000 Puerto Rican descent. And they're saying to me, we live in Chicago, Congressman. You're our congressman. We didn't vote for governor of Puerto Rico. We voted for you. We need you to do your job. And we need you to bring our loved ones to us in Chicago. And I have a mayor of the city of Chicago that says, we are going to welcome you with open arms. We'll enroll your kids in school. We'll get you the medical care that you need. We'll provide the housing when it's necessary. But Chicago wants to be for Puerto Rico what Houston was for New Orleans. Remember that? We opened up our hearts. Let's open up our hearts. We have to bring them to the mainland, and that is the word to use, because they're not in a foreign country. They're in the United States. You want to bring them from the island to where? To the mainland United States. That's all we want to do, is to train those who wish to do it. There are going to be brave souls that are going to want to stay there, and bless them. I respect them. But God, if you're older, if you're infirm, if you're a child, how many months do you have to go without a public school education before it is time for us to provide you one in a safe and decent place? And let me just say, the healthcare crisis is only going to continue to mount and to expand. I'm happy some colleagues of mine are going down there this weekend, and I told them, don't let them hoodwink you and take you to San Juan and take you to pleasant places. Tell them, take you into the mountains. 2/3 of the people live in the mountains of Puerto Rico. Find the people that are incomunicado. Go to them. See if there's water. See if there's electricity. See if there's doctors and medical attention. And if you don't see it, then ask the question, shouldn't we put them in a safe place now? Thank you.